Okay, let's get started. Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today for this very important discussion. I'm Phil DiToledo. I serve as the board chair of Birthright Israel Foundation. We've all been distressed reading what's going on college campuses today, but we should also take pride in the many Jewish students who have risen to the occasion and spoken out in support of Israel. And today we're going to hear from 5 of them. Before we hear from our panelists, I'd like to give you a very brief update about Birthright Israel trips. Our summer season has just begun, and right now we have participants on the ground in Israel, experiencing the magic of Birthright Israel, learning about Jewish resilience, and having open and honest dialogue about Israel and their Jewish identity. Thanks to all of you and donors across the country, this summer we expect 9,000 young adults to participate on the classic 10-day Birthright trip, 3,000 adults 18 to 40 to participate in a Birthright Onward volunteer trip, 1,400 to participate on a Birthright Onward internship, and 64 to participate in the 10-week Birthright Excel internship. That's nearly 13,500 young Jewish adults whose lives will be helped and transformed forever. Let me now introduce our 5 panelists who have demonstrated bravery, resilience, and leadership in the wake of anti-Semitism after October 7th. Yasmeen Ohebsion is graduating this year from Tulane University, and she'll be participating in Birthright Excel this summer. Yadegar is finishing her junior year at Columbia University and is a 2023 Birthright Israel alum. Talia Dror is graduating this year from Cornell University and is an alum of a 2022 Birthright Israel trip and a 2023 Birthright Onward internship. Jordana Levine graduated this year from the University of Michigan and is an alum of Birthright Israel Excel in 2022, and she's also the co-founder of Facts on the Ground. And Sabrina Jahan graduated from the University of Southern California and is an alum of a 2022 Birthright Israel trip. These young women represent what Jewish people have fought for thousands of years. We are incredibly proud to count them among the 850,000 plus Birthright Israel alums. The panel will be moderated by Andria Aylyarov, Birthright Israel Foundation's Director of Communications. I will now turn the call over to Andria.
Thank you so much, Phil. I'd love to start just by saying Yom Ha'Atzmaut Sameach. Today is the 76th anniversary of the modern state of Israel, and Birthright Israel Foundation is honored to be joined by these 5 young and heroic women who just continue to demonstrate Jewish resilience, a core value of our community and peoplehood. Yasmeen, Eden, Talia, Jordana, Sabrina, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for standing up for Jewish students everywhere. You are incredibly brave, and you have each spent months, some of you even years, fighting for the rights of Jewish students across the country. It is a fight that you did not sign up for, but I know that is one you will win for the sake of your peers, the future of Jewish students, and for Jewry in America. I'd like to begin this panel with the first question. Can you share with us, let's start off with Eden, tell us a little bit more about how your lives have changed since October 7th, and if you believe that the anti-Semitism we're currently seeing on college campuses is a direct result of this current war.
First of all, thank you so much, Andrea and Phil and everyone at Birthright for having us today and for the incredible and necessary work that you do to guarantee that Birthright can continue and flourish and really shape the lives of young Jews across the world. I think that in terms of how life as a student has changed since October 7th, I would say that on October 6th, I felt like a student at Columbia that also was Jewish, and now I feel like a Jewish student at Columbia. And I think that those are 2 very different things. I think a lot of my peers and even professors that, you know, I'm very obviously Jewish. I wear my nameplate and my dog tag. And I think all of us on this Zoom now have kind of become known on our campuses for being outspoken for this cause. And so I think that when people see me, they see my Judaism and they see my Zionism, and they can't really see past that without having a conversation with me. And unfortunately, what's so challenging on Columbia's campus in particular, and on many campuses across the country, is that a lot of these anti-Israel groups that represent thousands of students have adopted an anti-normalization doctrine in which they simply will not interact with anyone or anything they deem to be Zionist. And again, their definition of Zionist is, of course, very different than ours. Even if we all have different connections with Zionism and with Israel, their understanding of the word and the concept is radically and fundamentally different from our own. So what's been immensely challenging is feeling the sort of dehumanization that is coming from a lot of my peers and even professors on campus. So I would say that that has been the biggest change as a student. Obviously, my classwork and my schoolwork have kind of stopped being a priority. And I think that's been the case for, again, all of us here on this Zoom. And obviously we'll hear from everyone else, but unfortunately we've kind of been put in a position where this is the only thing that matters. And I feel so grateful that I get a platform to speak about this issue. But at the same time, I haven't really felt like a junior in college for 7 months now.
Thank you, Eden. Talia, can you tell us more about life at Cornell?
I mean, I think Eden said it great. On October 6th, I was elected into my position as the Cornelians for Israel student leader because I can host barbecues and advocacy programs. And all of a sudden on October 7th, that took a totally different meaning. And now, you know, you have to write statements, you have to be a leader, you have to be the voice of the pro-Israel movement on your campus. But I think it goes way beyond that. And I think something that for me shifted after October 7th was an understanding of students who claim to support diversity and inclusion, to support progressive values, only do it when it's convenient for them and when it fits their narrative. And so when I used to sit and think, how could the Holocaust have happened when the entire world was sitting and watching? Now I understand. Because my peers are sitting and watching, and students that I used to sit next to in class are sitting and watching and ignoring. And not just ignoring, but taking the other side and proactively being against Jews on campus. And so I have a fundamentally different perception of what my generation looks like and of what the broader societal context of what it means to be a Jew looks like post-October 7th in the campus world.
Thank you so much. Jordana, I'd love to go to you. You just graduated from the University of Michigan. I think we've seen a lot of that activity on the news.
Yeah, so first off, again, thank you so much for having me. I think something that's unique about the University of Michigan is that it's the largest public university in the US with the greatest number of both Jewish and Arab students. And so it was inevitable that the University of Michigan would be a hotbed for anti-Zionism. Personally, I just graduated as a Middle Eastern Studies major. And so I've definitely faced a lot of anti-Zionism in my classes throughout my college career. However, on October 7th and right after October 7th. And since then, it's gotten exponentially worse. Something that someone said to me shortly after October 7th that really gave me a lot of hope and has been a word that I think about all the time is this word from the Torah. It says hineni, which was a phrase that God said to Abraham when he was called upon to help start the Jewish nation. And so hineni literally means here I am. And so in this moment, I really feel like all of us and so many Jewish leaders across the country and around the world are really saying, here we are, we're here to stand, we're here to make our voices heard. And so that's something that I've kept in the back of my mind or really in the forefront since October 7th. So I will say it's definitely invaded all parts of social life and academic life on Michigan's campus, as it has and on many other college campuses, but we're not backing down, we're here to stay, we're gonna use our voices. So yeah. I definitely also just addressing the social media aspect. I definitely think that everything has risen to a level of hostility past anything that we could even have imagined because of social media. We're all so interconnected through our phones and computers and social media. And so it has rapidly increased through those means.
Later in the panel, I have a few questions from the audience regarding social media. So if we have time, we will be addressing more of that. Yasmeen, I'd love to turn it to you to share with us about life at Tulane.
Absolutely. Thank you, Andrea, Phil, Zev, and everybody in the Birthright family for hosting us today. I'll start by saying that I've been the president of, or co-president of, the movement to address anti-Semitism at Tulane University for about 16 months now. And so I've worked with Tulane's administration in an effort to implement mandatory anti-Semitism education and training in DEI for over 16 months. And I've really seen how the dynamics at the university have shifted before and after October 7th. I think that at Tulane, I could confidently say that before October 7th, it was a completely safe campus and space for Jews. It's almost 25% Jewish in the undergraduate school. So being Jewish, is definitely something that has been accepted, but the Jewish community has suffered to a pretty incredible degree since October 7th. And that social dynamic has really, really shifted. There has been a ton of terrible activity on campus, most recently the encampment. And I know we've probably all had encampments on our respective campuses, but what I've seen to be incredibly hurtful to our community and impactful in the situation most recently has been the 280 faculty members that have come out in support of the encampment at a school with less than 10,000 students in the undergraduate university. That 280 professors is really impactful in our community. And, this Jew hatred and blatant anti-Semitism has really become normalized. But I would also say that the administrations have become much more resistant to change, much more resistant to, helping us. And I think that part of that stems from maybe fear from backlash from the other side, and just, frankly, anti-Semitic administrators that I've dealt with. But I hope that we can make change and that things will get better soon, although the situation right now is really hard.
Yeah, I know it's very difficult for everyone, but I think the Jewish community stands strongly behind all of you. Sabrina, I'd love for you to share with us more about USC.
Yeah, of course. So again, thank you so much for giving us this platform to speak. I know we're all very grateful to be able to share our experiences. For me personally, I grew up in Jewish schools, so I had never witnessed any type of anti-Semitism, and I was lucky to be able to have that background. And USC historically was an apolitical campus. So after October 7th, none of us really thought that anyone would care. But I think what I witnessed was kind of this two-pronged effect where first I noticed that anti-Semitism that had been dormant now had a facade through which to operate, which was the war in Gaza. And people became very vocal, and I realized that this was hatred that was deeply rooted and was only now rearing its ugly head. And the other aspect of this, I think, was also a lot of students who wanted to find somewhere to fit in and something bigger than them to be a part of, and they found it in this very loud pro-Palestinian movement that spread this kind of anti-Semitic rhetoric. So for us, as has been said before, it became very evident that we're no longer just university students, but every day really became a new fight. Every day brought something different, a new challenge that was worse and more difficult than the previous one. And I think that that's been the most challenging part of, especially being in my last year at USC, having to kind of shift my focus from my studies and graduation to fighting anti-Semitism on our campuses, speaking with administration, trying to implement as many conversations and events as possible to be able to fight what I really think is at its core an information and media war because of all the misinformation that's being spread. But I also really do want to emphasize that while there have been those heartbreaking moments of looking on social media and realizing that people you called your best friends are now posting in support of a movement that chants for the death and genocide of your people, there also is that silver lining there that the Jewish communities across campuses have really come together. And I think that all of us are proof of that here today. And that's something that I also just want to mention, that I've never seen this kind of unity amongst the Jewish communities on campuses throughout the world. And I think that it shows the strength in that unity and in those numbers as the Jewish community and in our values.
Thank you. No, it's very important to know. I think a lot of people are uniting. I'd like to move on to another topic, and I think that you have all shared this. I've seen you all in various media outlets, that Jewish students do not feel safe on campus. I think that's a huge issue of this, especially when you're looking at the encampments and the slogans that those are chanting. Yasmeen, when we were preparing for this panel, you shared with me that you had conducted a survey on campus of the Jewish students, and that prior to October 7th, 15% of the Jewish students reported that they had experienced anti-Semitism. And you conducted the survey post October 7th, and the number jumped to 86%. I'd love for you to share more about your work with the survey. What was the meaning behind conducting this, and what are some more of your initiatives to combat anti-Semitism at Tulane?
Absolutely. Thank you. So, as I mentioned, I've been the co-president of the movement to address anti-Semitism at Tulane since January of 2023. And the movement was sparked more specifically by a student who published an article after Kanye West's rampage of tweets that was titled "Ye was right about the Jews," and she basically just went on this rant equating Jews with Nazis and praising Hitler. And that's when me and two of my peers came together to found the movement, which at the time was keenly focused on implementing mandatory anti-Semitism education and training in Tulane's DEI initiatives and programming, which covers a lot of other groups and other types of bias and discrimination. So our work began there. We worked on that for 7 months. And then, as I mentioned, after October 7th, things on campus really took a turn for the worst. On October 26th, there was a specifically violent rally on campus for Palestine where several students were physically assaulted, including my friend Dylan, who was hit so many times in the face by a megaphone that he was hospitalized and broke several bones in his face. So things really changed then, and our movement kind of expanded to fight for more broader protections for Jewish students and for physical safety, and, you know, to fight BDS and a lot of the other things that were affecting our campus. We, you know, moved forward in December, got the attention of some donors, and they signed on to some of our initiatives, specifically 3 things that we wanted to bring to the administration. So 2 days before that meeting with the president and provost of Tulane, I collected this data from 300 students, along with a ton of personal testimony that proved how deep-seated the anti-Semitism on campus really was and how much it was affecting students. The president and provost actually accepted our proposal, which is super exciting. And they agreed through a university-wide email to implement a lot of what we suggested. However, unfortunately, that process has been slow moving, and we've not seen a ton of progress toward that, but just getting a commitment from the university has been great. And we actually just recently collected another round of data, and we're still, you know, continuing to collect more from students. But I think collecting data has proven to be a really effective way to come to university administrations and be more than just one person. When I brought data from 300 students, I think that it was as if, you know, I was speaking to represent 300 students who so badly wanted the proposal that I was suggesting to be implemented. And so I think it's a really powerful way to show numbers, to bring a lot of experiences to a person at one time. But truthfully, I think that my work has really shown, you know, how complex and difficult it can be to work with these university administrators. And frankly, that a lot of them are just purely anti-Semitic and really subscribe to a lot of, you know, the typical anti-Semitic tropes that we're seeing now and personally support Palestine. And so I think that, you know, it's been an incredible like journey, just trying to kind of learn and understand. And I really hope that I can continue connecting with students. I've appointed successors at Tulane, but I'd love to continue connecting with students at other schools, which I've been doing to kind of help give insight about how these administrators respond to certain asks and react in certain situations, because I think we really need to kind of gear ourselves up for how difficult this fight is really going to continue to be.
Yeah, I think we have years ahead of us, but you all are doing incredible initiatives. And I think the survey is something that's very interesting, that you can bring data to the administration and say, look, Eden, you and hundreds of students at Columbia recently wrote an open letter. Half of those that signed the letter are Birthright Israel alums, which we, as a foundation, could not be more proud of. I'd love to read a portion of it for those on the call that have not had a chance to hear. I know when I read it myself, my eyes swelled up with tears, because this paints the reality of what your life is as a college student in America, particularly at Columbia. In the letter you wrote, "We were ultimately not surprised when a leader of the Quad encampment said publicly and proudly that Zionists do not deserve to live, that we're lucky they are not just going out and murdering Zionists. We felt helpless when we watched students and faculty physically block." I'm sorry, it's very hard that this is your reality. Physically block Jewish students from entering parts of the campus, or even when they turn their faces away in silence. This silence is familiar. We will never forget. One thing is for sure: we will not stop standing up for ourselves. We are proud to be Jews, and we are proud to be Zionists. I apologize. It's just, this is a very scary reality for you all. I'd love for you to share what the response to this letter has been from your fellow peers. If anyone from, the SJP chapters have reached out, what has your administration said to this? Did it garner any attention?
Well, first of all, thank you, Andrea, for sharing. So I actually had the privilege of co-authoring this letter with 3 of my peers, and we initially wrote it for the Columbia Spectator, which is the Columbia newspaper. We submitted it to them 3 times. They didn't respond. They didn't publish it. And then the New York Times picked it up, which is ironic considering they don't necessarily favor our perspective either. But that was definitely very triumphant, because the feedback we got from Jews across the country was overwhelmingly positive and of support and empathy, like what you're expressing now, which to us really helps to keep us going, because like the letter says, it's incredibly isolating, and the Jewish community in many senses does feel alone. We submitted it to the administration as well. We emailed it to the president, the COO, the provost, etc. Nobody got back to us. Nobody responded. And like you said, the letter is incredibly heartfelt. It's not intended to be political or to send any political message whatsoever. It's truly us just putting our hearts and our experiences on a page. And almost 700 Columbia students have signed this letter, and dozens of others that have expressed support for it have expressed that they're also afraid, because once they put their name out there, they're afraid that they can be subject to harassment, to being targeted, like I think all of us on this Zoom probably have been. So on one end, it was incredibly, heartwarming and really uplifting to see the positive feedback that we've been getting. But from those in the intended audience, which is the Columbia administration and our non-Jewish peers, for the most part, we either haven't heard back or we've gotten really negative feedback. There's an app called SideChat that is sort of like an anonymous Twitter for universities. You sign up with your university email and you can post whatever you want, but everything is kept anonymous. And I think, a bunch of schools use it. And the things that people were posting were saying, these Zionists make everything about themselves. There's no anti-Semitism here. This is just a ploy to spread, their settler colonial agenda and enforce Zionism at Columbia, which, would be laughable if it wasn't so disturbing because of how misinformed these claims are. But it's really, I think, a testament to the situation on campus that those who we really wrote the letter trying to reach simply did not listen to what we had to say.
I'm so sorry. I encourage everyone to read the letter if you haven't. It's very impactful, but thank you for working on that. So Jordana, following October 7th, I want to go to the University of Michigan. I think that you took a little bit of a different approach to the entire situation with facts on the ground, which I'd love for you to explain a little bit more about. You and a few other Birthright Israel Excel Fellows sought after this initiative because you wanted to have conversations and combat misinformation. I'd love for you to share more about the response that you got to your events with some of the people that you were bringing in from both sides of this situation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I participated in Birthright Excel in 2022, and there are 4 other Excellers in my year at the University of Michigan. And so following October 7th, we saw a massive increase in rise in disinformation and misinformation that was pervading our college campus. And so we took that as a way to kind of really combat anti-Semitism, especially when we saw a campus-wide referendum on an incredibly anti-Israel proposal where 50,000 undergraduate and graduate students were essentially asked whether or not Israel has the right to exist. And so we came together to build this movement called Facts on the Ground, where we're focused on combating anti-Semitism through dialogue, education, and political advocacy. And so in December or end of November, we held an event with the current CEO of AJC, and his name is Ted Deutsch, and Mossab Hassan Youssef, who is the son of one of the co-founders of Hamas, which was overall quite a positive event. We had a great turnout. There were no protests that happened, so that was great. But more recently, we hosted an event with the former Prime Minister of Israel, Naftali Bennett, and we were strategically trying not to release advertisements or PR information about him coming to the University of Michigan. However, that information was then publicized the day before our event, and the space where we were supposed to host the event was totally disrupted with protests for hours leading up to our event. And so we actually had to move our event off campus to an undisclosed location. We had to close down the ticketing platform because it was infiltrated by over 600 students who registered under the names of unalive Zionists, Zionist fascists, etc. And so it was not going to be safe for us to host an event with students who were signing up under those kind of aliases. And so we moved the event off campus. We were blacklisted by the SJP chapter at University of Michigan, and it faced a lot of hate since then. And I think right after our event, the encampments started coming up all around the country. And so that was a pretty harsh reality to face right after our event. But nonetheless, we persisted. We were able to have the event. We were able to live stream it where thousands of people watched online. So that was definitely, we're proud of everything that we did. But it would have been amazing to have had thousands of students see it in person. But that's kind of where we're at.
It's an incredible initiative. Are there plans to keep Facts on the Ground going now that you've graduated?
Absolutely. We have a number of really strong younger students, a lot of students at the University of Michigan who have joined our movement, who will be leading it in the next coming years. And so we're excited to keep up with our work.
Great, good job. Sabrina, let's go back to USC. I know you've been working very hard. You've actually, I feel like you shared a little bit, you made a little headway with the administration and had a meeting. Can you just tell us more about your initiatives to combat the anti-Semitism at your school?
Yeah, of course. So I think USC and what we've been doing is a really good example of how, while the underlying issues in all these universities are the same, it's important to be able to understand how the differences of each campus and how they're run and the leadership involved should kind of be used strategically to our advantage to achieve what we want to do. So, for example, at USC, I like to say that the chaos that was brought to our campus was a self-inflicted wound, 100%. I'm sure many of you know that the USC Commencement Committee decided to appoint a valedictorian that was blatantly anti-Semitic and spread anti-Israel hate and vitriol all over her social media, calling for the abolition of Israel. And when we, as the Jewish student body, combated this decision, we were met obviously with an incredible amount of backlash that ultimately led to the protests and later the encampments. But at USC, we also have a historically very strong connection between the president's office and the Jewish community, specifically with the Chabad and Hillel rabbis. And so we decided to really leverage that relationship by securing a meeting with President Folt and then being very strategic in how we approached it. So similar to kind of what Yasmeen's data and research collection set out to achieve, we brought dozens of student testimonies and anecdotes that spoke to specific instances of anti-Semitism that had happened post the protests, where students had been targeted and, you know, even sent death threats, and the president and the provost were horrified. And that, I think, definitely gave them the final push to actually ultimately get rid of the encampments. We saw a statement from the president the following day, actually, to the entire student body, to the entire university, saying that disciplinary action was going to be taken, and within the next few days, the encampments were ultimately taken down by LAPD. So that was a huge win in terms of leveraging the tools that we had at our disposal to be able to bring change. But I think that the other aspect of it that we've really been focusing on this semester has been also making sure that while we're working behind the scenes, we're also working in the public eye and in the public forum. So when we saw the violent and egregious protests that happened on a few weeks ago on a Wednesday, I believe, at our campus, we decided the next day that we would demonstrate to the entire community what the Jewish community stands for. And so we set up a peaceful and unifying Seder table in honor of the hostages over Passover, invited students to come and speak to educators about the conflict. And obviously we were met with some hate and anti-Semitism and a few Heil Hitlers and spits on the ground in front of us. But overall, I would say it was a really enlightening experience for a lot of students. And I got messages from non-Jewish friends who told me that seeing our community come together in the face of what we had experienced, the hatred that we had experienced the previous day, made them feel safer. The fact that we weren't scared to show who we are and fight for peace and raise our voices in the name of that unity made a lot of students be able to see the difference between what one side was fighting for versus what we were fighting for. So I think that dual approach has actually gotten us really far at USC, even though we're obviously fighting against a much louder and more aggressive presence.
No, good job. I mean, totally keep it up. I'm sure you'll pass the baton to other students. Talia, I'd love to go to you at Cornell. I think that you have been sounding the alarm on campus anti-Semitism for some time. I know months ago you gave a testimony in front of the House committee, as did a few others on this panel. And I'd love for you to like share with everyone, why do you feel sometimes that, you know, these US universities, the anti-Semitism is not necessarily a priority for them? And if you feel that, like, what else could be done to protect Jewish students?
Yeah. So back in November, I did testify in front of the House Ways and Means Committee about the anti-Semitism at Cornell that was immediately following the explicit death threats towards Jewish students that were posted on an anonymous posting platform, basically saying that they were going to kill all Jews, rape all the Jewish women. And since then, it was really interesting to see the impact that that had on both Cornell itself, in the sense that an investigation was opened by the House committee against Cornell. And the chairman of the House committee, Jason Smith, has been sending questions to Cornell since then. One of the most recent ones being, do you think anti-Semitism is an actual issue on your campus? And I think the administration's answer would be no.
Yeah.
I think they believe that it's a couple of isolated incidents. Because at the end of the day, the administration doesn't treat anti-Jew bigotry the way they do every other form of bigotry.
Right. And we're seeing that across the country, I think.
And you don't have to look further than the statements that these universities released in the immediate aftermath of October 7th. After over 1,000 Jews were slaughtered in cold blood, universities couldn't even garner, the strength to put out half a strong statement where, when it comes to anti-Asian hate, anti-Black hate, controversial Supreme Court cases, the war in Ukraine, all of a sudden they're so decisive. But when it has to deal with Jews, all of a sudden everyone is silent. And you're seeing that pattern on every single thing. The precedent that is upheld when you're dealing with any other form of bigotry is not upheld when it comes to anti-Semitism or anti-Zionism or direct threats against Jewish students. Like many of us on this call have already expressed, just because we are outspoken Zionists, we are regularly targeted.
Yeah.
The university uses the excuse of, well, that's anti-Zionism, which isn't actually anti-Semitism, so we don't have to defend you, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because you should be upholding the same exact precedent that you would for any other form of bigotry when it comes to Jews. And unfortunately, the reality is that they're not.
Right. We've spoken, I think a few of you have mentioned the word misinformation. And I think that the age that we live in with social media, especially within your generation, this is a huge challenge. At a lot of these encampments and protests, the students are yelling from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, which is a call for the genocide of Jews. They're also screaming, globalize the Intifada. Would any of you like to share, how do you think that students are learning these phrases? Do you actually think they have a concrete meaning of what it is that they're saying? And do you think that social media is fueling this fire? Feel free to unmute yourself to take a stab at it.
I can start. So what really is frightening to me is that this is not grassroots. The movement, I don't even want to call it a pro-Palestinian movement because at the essence it's not, it's anti-Israel and anti-Jew. But whatever you want to call it, this movement is not being led by students. And we know that for a fact. On October 8th, Columbia's chapter of SJP released a toolkit that actually, it was a national SJP toolkit, excuse me. And it was pages and pages and pages, and it included the chants, like you mentioned, from the river to the sea. There is only one solution, Intifada revolution, which is evoking Hitler's final solution for the Jews, but that's a separate conversation in itself. But point being, this isn't coming from the students, and actually, what I find really curious with the encampments is that we're seeing the same $400 tents pop up on campuses across the country. We saw the encampments pop up in clusters. So New York City schools within a day, USC and UCLA within a day, Boston colleges within a day, Midwestern schools. And I find it really interesting that students across the country could be so organized and so on the same page, right? It's interesting. And what I also find, to be particularly frightening is that Columbia's chapter of SJP was inactive on campus and on social media for months, nearly 6 months. And then on October 6th, they posted a photo with the entire country of Israel that said Palestine and said, "We're back for our first meeting, glory to the revolution," on October 6th. And this isn't unique to Columbia's chapter of SJP, Students for Justice in Palestine. We've seen this movement across the country and now even across the world in the UK as well be incredibly unified. And a big part of that is through the chants and through the rhetoric. And so I think it's very important to note that this isn't being led and organized by students. And I think the majority of students initially didn't know what those chants meant. I think it's been 7 months and ignorance is no longer an excuse. And that when I, as a Jewish person, say it's anti-Semitic to call for an Intifada revolution and, I'm ignored and I'm not listened to, I can no longer excuse it as ignorance, no matter where it's coming from.
Thank you. For the sake of time, there was a question from the audience. Maybe Sabrina, you'd like to answer this just because of what's happening at USC, but I think there's a lot of questions around like who's making up these encampments? Is it truly the student body or are these outside agitators coming in? I know we saw, I think it was a few weeks ago that the Columbia protesters, attendees of this encampments ran down to NYU. So I'd love to just hear, what do you as students feel is the makeup of these?
Yeah, I think it actually goes exactly back to what Eden was saying. The first day that the protests came to USC, it was abundantly clear that the majority of these protesters were not student agitators. They were outside individuals who had been called to an organized protest that had been scheduled at a certain time in a specific part of our university to cause chaos. And that's exactly what they did. And the university wasn't equipped to handle it. And I think that many of our universities were not, because they did not expect that something like this could ever happen. Neither did I. And it was absolutely chaotic, and LAPD did have to get involved on that first day, and then they came back the next day. But as Eden said, it's not organized by students, it's definitely coming from someone else, because when we would walk through, excuse me, the streets of our campus, we would see that the majority of sorry, excuse me, the people donning keffiyehs and chanting these slogans, whether they know what they mean or not, were either middle-aged men and women with children who had brought their children and their entire families, individuals who you could tell had no business being on campus grounds, and any conversation that you tried to have with any of these individuals immediately was snuffed out because you were a Zionist and you were recognized as being one. So I think that once the university started to crack down more, it became more so students, at least on the USC campus, who were promoting those kinds of forms of hate speech and in the encampments. But definitely in the beginning, it was organized majority by outside agitators.
Thank you. Yasmeen, I'd love for you to answer that, but just because we're sensitive on time. So our summer season has started back up for Birthright, and I think all of you represent the core values of our mission so much, but I think that what you're going through and feeling unsafe, you know, you want to feel pride in who you are. And I think we're talking about the Jewish community is more united than ever. And Yasmeen, I think that you can answer both questions with this, but I'd love to hear, why do you think immersive experiences in Israel can like truly play a role in a young Jewish adult's life right now? Because I think there's just such a need for that like collective unity and feeling the strength, not just of the Jewish people, but I think it's the strength and resilience of Israelis. And Yasmeen, you're going on Excel, you're leaving in a few weeks. I'd love to hear, you know, why is this experience and having this experience so important to you?
Absolutely. Well, first off, I think that just being in the land of Israel allows students and people to connect to their Judaism in a way that can't be compared to any other experience. I can say that Eden and I actually went on a trip with some of our other cousins to Israel last summer. And just being in the land of Israel for 5 or 6 days was so nurturing and comforting, and really reminds you why you're so prideful and proud of your Judaism. But I think that the experience that Birthright trips offer is even more unique because you are coming, and you're coming with a group of people your age, so you can really not only connect with the land of Israel, but also connect with other people who are interested in being there. And I think that a lot of us have had such isolating experiences on our campus. Like, I can't wait to be living in a dorm style building with the 64 other Excellers and be around people who love Israel and love Jewish people and don't want to be engaging in this crazy behavior. So I think that for a lot of people this year, as simple as it sounds, it's just a really great break, but it's also, I think, kind of like the gas in the tank that we need to refresh, reconnect. For me, I'm working at a VC this summer that focuses on cybersecurity, and a lot of the firms that the company invests in are actually firms that are, you know, working with the Israel Defense Forces to aid in the operation in Gaza and its other war efforts. So I think that, you know, it's a unique opportunity academically, intellectually, professionally as well, specifically Excel. And I think that the other Birthright programs offer similar opportunities where students can connect to the land of Israel and really have an impact and do work that they're not only passionate about, but that actually helps and serves the people of Israel. And I've already talked to the other people in my Excel group about volunteering and going, you know, to hospitals and rehab centers on the weekends and doing barbecues for soldiers. So I think that ultimately the group is just students that want to go above and beyond.
Yeah, so we are actually at time, but I want to say that it was amazing that we had groups on the ground for this Yom Ha'Atzmaut in particular. Some of them spent the day volunteering on farms that didn't have enough workers because of October 7th. So it's incredible. And we are so proud of each of you that I cannot thank you enough. I know that you're in the midst of finals, you're in the midst of graduation and this battle on these college campuses, and we can't thank you enough for taking the time to be here today. We will try to address the questions from the viewers at another time, but we are just incredibly inspired by your leadership and most of all your bravery. And we stand behind you. I think the entire Jewish community stands behind you now, and I think that we will be with you as long as this fight takes. So I just want to let everyone know that this panel has been recorded. We will be sharing it across our social media channels following the end of the call. And we encourage everyone to just share this with your friends and your family. The remarks from these young women, their harrowing experiences, we need to uplift their voices and shed light on the important work that they're doing. So please be on a lookout from an email from Birthright Israel Foundation. Within that email, Brandeis University actually just released another study that shows the impact from our summer 2023 cohort, and it underscores the transformative impact of our 10-day trip on participants. I'll share a little bit of the data here, but compared to Birthright applicants who did not participate on a trip last summer, the data reveals just how crucial these programs are right now. For instance, the study found that from April to December 2023, those that had gone on the trip, their Israel activism actually increased by 77% compared to those who have not participated. And the email will be coming out, but we encourage you to read this study. And anyone that has not gone on the trip or anyone that's looking to get involved, now is the time for us to ensure these experiences are around, because I think that our campuses need strong Jewish leaders like the young women who are on this call right now. So if you'd love to learn more about Birthright Israel Foundation and get involved and make an impact, you can visit birthrightisrael.foundation. And we look forward to speaking with everyone. And thank you. We will be in touch. So have a great night. Thank you, everyone, for listening in.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for having us.
Yom Ha'Atzmaut Sameach.
Thank you so much.